Hi everyone. This video is long overdue, but as many of you will be aware, the last time that I updated the tier list, we did a 12-hour live stream, which was quite taxing, and I wanted to make sure that I made a regular update video for anyone who didn't want to watch the entire 12-hour stream. I wanted to cut down the stream to make it into like, I don't know, a 2-hour long video maybe? But it turns out editing a 12-hour long stream is quite the task, and even with cutting that stream down, the update video would have ended up being something like 6 hours. And we're going to get started in just a second, but we do have some business to take care of before we get going. We're going to talk about our sponsor for this video, MyHeritage. There's a drive in all of us to discover who we are and where we come from. And as helpful as stories of old are from various family members, chances are you're never going to get the full picture of your family history by sitting down for a chat with any given family member. Well, that's where MyHeritage comes in. MyHeritage is the #1 family history service that helps you discover everything you need to know about your family tree by cross-referencing your information with over 19 billion records. I've already started filling out my family tree, and in the first moments of signing up for MyHeritage, I've already traced my ancestry back to the 18th century, giving me an interesting story to follow from my mother's family's origins in Ireland and Denmark to their settling in Canada, and then eventually down into Utah. I can discover more about each family member through the historical records MyHeritage has collected, including accurate birth and death dates, information about their different residences, portraits, and even pictures of their birth certificates and other records to clue me in more on each of their stories. With their instant discovery tool, I've also managed to add over 70 people to my tree that further explains where my family comes from. And with MyHeritage's Smart Match tool, it only keeps growing as I comb through more and more entries to continue fleshing out my family tree. And all these features are as easy to use as clicking a button to give your tree a more personal touch. So if you've ever found yourself longing for more information about your family's history like I have, make sure to head over to MyHeritage by clicking the link down below or by scanning the QR code on your screen, where you'll get access to a 14-day free trial that is guaranteed to give you some much-needed insight into your personal family history. You heard that right. You're just a simple click or a quick scan away from reaching back into your past today with a 14-day free trial to MyHeritage. So don't wait. Click that link in the description or scan that QR code on your screen now to start discovering more about who you are and where you come from. Thank you, MyHeritage, for sponsoring this video. So what I'm doing now is just making that update video for you by going through the placements that we made on stream. And the reason that that stream was so long is because we did the Great Reshuffling, which means that we took every pick that I had already placed in previous update videos, and with your input, we placed them all again. Because, you know, my opinion on these characters might be different from yours, so I wanted to factor in what you guys had to say about all these characters. And going forward, we're going to do streams for every tier list update, so that you can all put your input in every single time. Now, we're not going to do a Great Reshuffling every single time, because that would just be redundant. So what we're going to do is, for the next one, any placements that you see here that we placed last time, they might be moved next time around. You know, maybe, for example, Cameron Alexander will be moved up a couple spots or moved down a couple spots, depending on who we place next to him in this update. You know, there's going to be, I don't know how many characters, 30 plus characters to place on this next update. So depending on where they go, some of these spots might move around a little bit. And speaking of the next update stream, we're going to go ahead and do that on May 19th, Sunday, May 19th. We did the last one on Sunday, November 19th, so that seems like the perfect date to do another update. I believe last time I started streaming at 10 in the morning Pacific time. Maybe it was 11, I'm not sure. I will make I don't know what you call it, a live stream waiting room to let you guys all know the exact time it's going to be. But it will be May 19th. So Sunday, May 19th, we will do another live stream and update the tier list with the last 6 months episodes then. So I'm going to be testing out something here pretty soon, which is 4-hour-ish live streams where I'll just be researching like I do for each video, and you guys can kind of tag along for the process and maybe put some of your input into whatever I'm writing at the time, or point me towards some aspects of characters that I might not have seen without your help. And just in general, just hang out and connect with you guys a little more. So I don't know exactly when I'm going to start doing those, but I'll announce it in a community post, or maybe even in an episode. So stay tuned for that, and I hope that's something exciting that some of you are looking forward to. But right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through every single pick on this list and let you guys know why we placed the ones that were already placed where they are now, and why we placed the last round of characters where they are now as well. I might not remember some of the exact reasonings, but I have a pretty good idea of why we placed them where we did. So yeah, that's what this is. This is a cut down version of the 12-hour live stream for those of you who wanted a shorter viewing experience for this update. Okay, so now we can get started, but there's something else that I forgot to mention. The last update I did personally about a year ago, I have that pulled up on my second monitor over here. And as we go through this list and talk about the characters that we moved around that were already placed, I will mention why I placed them where I did originally, and why we chose to move them around after the fact, or why you guys thought that they deserve to be in a different place. So to start off, Morgoth, he didn't move. He is pretty solidly the most evil character that I've covered so far. He is the devil of the Lord of the Rings universe. And as the devil of that universe, that means he is the source of all the evil in that universe. So when you're the source of all of evil, then you're kind of number one. I mean, you have no equal, really. The only one who comes close is our second spot, which is Judge Holden, who in the episode I made on him, I made the argument that Judge Holden is also the devil. So if he's the devil, he's also the source of all evil in our world. The only caveat is that in the Tolkien universe, the Tolkien Legendarium, we are pretty certain that Middle-earth is the only planet, and therefore Morgoth is the supreme evil of that entire universe. Now, in our universe, we don't really know if, the devil has hold on any other planet in the universe where there might be life. So, because Judge Holden is the devil, but not the devil of an entire universe, perhaps, he's second to Morgoth. But he is definitely still deserving of being in that second spot. If you guys know who Judge Holden is, if you've watched the episode or other videos on him, or have read the book, he is monumentally evil. And then Bill Cipher, he's also sort of a devil-like figure. He's not the source of all the evil in his universe, but he is an interdimensional evil who completely destroyed his home dimension and is just wreaking havoc throughout the multiverse, pretty much. So when you're an interdimensional evil that's massacred an entire dimension, I mean, that's grounds for sticking you up in S tier, that's for sure. So he definitely deserves to be right there. Next is Damien, who, similar to Judge Holden, he's not the source of all evil, or sorry, similar to Bill Cipher, he's not the source of all evil, he is the son of the source of all evil. He's the Antichrist. So, as the son of the devil, He gets a high spot next to other devil-like characters. Same thing with Pazuzu, who isn't the Antichrist, he's just a demon, but he is a representative of evil, pretty much. There is nothing you can say that's good about Pazuzu the demon, who just, torments people because that's what he does. Now, these were new placements. Palpatine, technically, he didn't move, because I had Palpatine next to Judge Holden when I did the list, and the only reason these three are above him now is because they were new episodes that I made, and they are more evil than him. But Palpatine he's a Dark Lord, Emperor of an entire galaxy, and his crimes, while, similar to, let's say, Voldemort, right, who tried to take over the wizarding world, establish a wizard dictatorship, and probably kill all the muggles at some point. He only did that on a planetary scale, right? Similar to Palpatine, but Palpatine did it on a galactic scale. So I don't always factor in scale when making placements, because there's a lot more to a character's actions and their person besides just how much evil they do. It's how much evil they do for what reason, which is why Thanos is down here, which we'll talk about a little later on. Palpatine is pure evil. He just wants power, just wants to rule the galaxy and do with it as he sees fit. And yeah, he does it on a galactic scale. So that's what keeps Palpatine up towards the top. Griffith was one that you guys wanted to move. Griffith previously was sort of middle of the pack S tier. But you guys, I understand why Griffith would be in such a high spot, because he's pretty much doing everything that he does for himself. And it's all to get a kingdom. That's all he's ever wanted, is to have his own kingdom. And to get that kingdom, he sacrifices all of his friends and does some horrific things to another one of his friends, Casca, and then becomes this essentially a demon god who does get his kingdom. So, not quite on the scale of Mr. Rule the Galaxy here, but Griffith is a pretty bad person, and I'm totally fine with the fact that you guys wanted to move him. I had him on a little lower previously because, I don't know, I didn't take into account everything that he's done, I guess. But that's a, good reason to have Griffith up here. The Baron is, I would personally, so here's another thing, I don't know if I said this already, but I am not going to move anything right now. Where we put everyone is where they're staying for now. But personally, if I was going to move someone, I'd probably move the Baron above Griffith. Sorry, I have trouble saying Griffith's name for some reason. But the Baron is, he's a galactic businessman. He's not an emperor. He doesn't have control over the entire universe or the entire galaxy, but he is, just trying to further his family's interests for power and pleasure. Baron Harkonnen, he definitely deserves to be where he's at. I also had him down a few spots last time around too, but you guys wanted him bumped up, and rightfully so. Again, the scale of what he does is monumental, and he's diabolically evil. Ganondorf, I actually had Ganondorf above the Baron last time around. You guys wanted him moved down a tad, and that's fine too, because similarly, the scale of what Ganondorf does isn't on par with like the Baron or Palpatine or maybe even Griffith, but he is the Demon King, the source of all the evil in his world, through demise. So kind of, on par with Morgoth and Judge Holden, but to a lesser degree. So, Ganondorf being there makes sense. I had Am next to Palpatine last time, but he's interesting, to say the least. I mean, a tormented computer who has an existential crisis and kills everyone on the planet and then tortures 5 people for all eternity. I think what we talked about last time is that, you know, in a way, he's like a tragic figure because he was built to be what he is and he went mad because of it. But what he does is insane and horrific. So Am being around here makes sense. Shodan is similar to Am. Shodan also went insane when it was allowed to have free will, and didn't quite accomplish as much as Am, but they're birds of a feather, you know. And Am and Shodan marriage would probably end the entire universe, you know. 2 mad computer systems doing horrible things to people. Ingsoc and Wayland Yutani. I had Ingsoc next to Am and Wayland down next to the Baron because Wayland is quite similar to the Baron in that they're just a big old business looking to make as much money as they can in whatever way possible. And what makes them so horrible is their willingness to exploit the xenomorph and risk the extinction of not just humanity, but every other living thing in the universe. Because if the xenomorphs spread, any planet the xenomorphs go to, they devour everything. And if you're going to give them access to advanced spaceships where they can latch onto them and go to any world that ship goes to, well, this is like a severe existential threat born from greed. So, you know, I had him next to the Baron because it's kind of similar in a business sense. But we put these 3 together, Ingsoc, Norsefire, Wayland Yutani, because, you know, there are 3 evil organizations that all have monumentally nefarious goals. Ingsoc, as you all likely well know, is the party that rules. I forget what they call it in 1984. I forget what the country or that zone is called because it's divided into zones, if I'm not mistaken. But you know, they're a totalitarian, Stalinist-esque dictatorship that has propped themselves up as the rulers of this post-apocalyptic world, and they quash all freedom. No one's free. People are abused. People die on a daily basis. Ingsoc is horrific. So I putting these, and Norsefire is like baby Ingsoc because they kind of do the same thing after an apocalyptic event, a nuclear war. They install themselves as the rulers of England. And Ingsoc has a little more influence over like a wider region, and what they do is actually far worse than Norsefire. But again, Norsefire is pretty much baby Ingsoc. So it makes sense to put Norsefire next to Ingsoc, and to have these 3 next to each other, I get it. You know, I understand why you guys wanted to make sure that these were by each other. Now what this means right here, because when I covered American History X, I covered the entire film. You know, I did a characters and themes video, and this pretty much represents the racist ideology that brainwashes people like Derek Vineyard, and turns them into who they are. And as a concept, it's kind of hard to rank a concept as, you know, on a tier list like this, but I think that's a pretty horrible concept, and it's caused a lot of misery and evil to occur in this world. And you know, I had it in S tier before as well. Oops, that's gonna do that a lot probably because I'm switching back and forth between monitors. I sorry guys, but anyway, yeah, American History X is or the racist ideology that leads to people falling into this trap that Derek fell into is pretty horrific. And I had them in S tier before. I had them a little lower, but you know, putting them this high is perfectly fine. So I definitely get why we wanted to move this up here. And then, you know, right next to racist ideologies that corrupt and poison people and cause so much misery, we have Amon Gert, who ascribed to a racist ideology and hurt thousands and thousands of people. Amon is from Schindler's List, as I'm sure most of you are aware. And that movie is a very hard watch because of what he does. And it's even more so a hard read because the movie is based on a book. And I talked about some of the things that they put in the book that they really couldn't put in the movie. And needless to say, Amon is probably one of the worst people who ever lived. And at least in the top 50. I don't know. Because if you go through history, there's plenty of bad people out there. So I'm not sure exactly where he'd go in like a top most evil real people of all time, but he's definitely in the conversation. And then again, another racist ideology, you know, Dark Lord-esque figure, Voldemort. I talked about him a little bit a minute ago. Voldemort is pretty much a wizard Nazi, you know. And putting him next to a real Nazi makes a lot of sense. I had them next to each other on my original list as well. I just had them a little further up. But considering the scale of these picks ahead of them, I should say, Voldemort and Amon, it makes sense that they should be a little lower. But yeah, so that's why they are where they are. Ozai was a new addition. Anyone who's seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, he is also pretty much a Dark Lord, you know, wants to rule the entire world, and he'll kill anyone he has to do it, attain massive power through his firebending and torture people, anything. You know, Ozai would do anything, and I've talked about it before with Azula, who's down here. If Avatar wasn't a kid's show, we probably would have seen Ozai and Azula doing much more horrific things than they did. But, you know, it's the medium, and he's only... You don't really see him doing too much, but you know that he's responsible for a lot and has probably done a lot of things on his own. Not to mention, you know, corrupting his daughter and making her into who she is. And then next to Ozai, another new addition, is Little Jack Horner, who... Excuse me. Little Jack Horner, who... Kinda similar to Ozai. He's... also a Dark Lord who, see, so when I say the word Dark Lord, it's you probably think of like Palpatine or Voldemort or maybe even Darth Vader, you know, dark persona. But when I say they're Dark Lords, I mean in like a personality and motivation sense. Little Jack Horner wanted to get all the magic in the world to rule or destroy the world, and it's pretty much what a Dark Lord does. So Jack Horner being up here makes a lot of sense too. Now Kefka, I had always put in A tier, and I had always put Kefka in A tier because there is a bit of tragedy in his backstory. You know, he's a genetically modified super soldier, the first one of his kind, and that drove him absolutely insane. So in that way, you can have a bit of sympathy for Kefka. You know, nobody should have to go through that. Nobody wants to get corrupted into this mad villain that he is. But as you guys pointed out, Kefka's responsible for destroying nearly the entire world, and he was going to, if he wasn't stopped, he would have ruled over that world as an eternal god of chaos and destruction. So what sympathy there is to be found in his backstory is muted by his actions. So, you know, you guys wanted him up in S, and that's why. And, you know, that's pretty fair reasoning. Now, Freddy, I had an S, you know, because Freddy is awful. I actually had him quite high. But again, when you're placing a character in this list, you have to think about who's below them and who's above them. And all the people that are above Freddy and institutions, companies, political parties, they do things on a far grander scale than Freddy does, but Freddy is still terrible. He's not just a murderer, but an abuser, and invades people's nightmares and makes life a living hell for dozens of people. He's a totally malicious entity who has no remorse for what he's doing, and he deserves to be up here. Same with Pinhead. I actually had Pinhead in B tier because I wasn't too sure about how much he's responsible for and how much you can blame on the box. Like, is he just a slave to the box, or is he actually doing what he's doing because that's what he wants to do? And well, it turns out when I remastered the Hellraiser video, I learned that there's so much like Pinhead comics and Hellraiser comics and novellas and stuff like that, and yeah, Pinhead is doing what he does because he wants to. And he's arguably, like Freddy, it's hard to say, who should go above who, but they both cause immense amount of pain, and they're supernatural entities of pure evil. So, they're here for a reason. Now, the Overlook Hotel is, we put it here because I had it in S, kind of high. It was still around, like, Freddy and Michael Myers. But, again, everyone above it is worse, and the hotel is pretty much just a malicious entity that possesses people and kills people. There's not much more to it, and it's also another being of pure evil, really. So that's why it's here. The Litolka, they were a new addition. So the Litolka, they're from a movie called Infinity Pool. If you guys haven't seen it, it came out last year, and it's a really good movie. I enjoyed it a lot. I don't think I got the same interpretation as most people did. When I watched it, I thought these guys were the villains, and they are the native inhabitants of this island. I forget the island's name, but it seems like the tourists who are like rampaging through the island are the villains, right? But the Litolka, they have this system where they can make a clone of you, and then that clone stands trial for whatever crimes you did. And I had a feeling that they were doing what they were doing on purpose and making people into these clones, not giving them the option. They were, pushing them to commit crimes or putting them in situations where they would commit crimes and doing this to people for whatever reasons they have. And there's a lot of like occult-like symbolism in the film and pseudo-scientific magic that they do to make these clones. So it's very strange, very strange, and I don't completely trust that what they do is just, oh, here's an option for you to get out of prison or any other kind of punishment. So yeah, that's why they're there. And then Jack, from the house that Jack built, where did I have him before? I had him next to Freddy because they're pretty similar, but again, the Litolka and the Overlook Hotel, they're a little bit more pervasive than Jack is. But Jack is awful. He's pretty much a serial killer who documents all his work, makes weird art out of it, and no remorse, no mercy, no empathy. A serial killer up in S tier, where he belongs. Michael Myers, well, like with Freddy, I had him up higher before. But in this same you know, this stream right here is kind of like, and Jack had some sort of like mystical elements to him in the story because he does go through like the 7 circles of hell. I don't know if he goes through all the circles, but he is guided by Virgil, right? Virgil is the one who wrote Dante's Inferno. I might be wrong on that one. I'm sorry. You know, there's a lot of characters, a lot of stuff I've covered. I'm gonna get some things wrong, guys, just so you know. So feel free to correct me down below. But anyway, Michael is totally remorseless too. Michael might be down in like B tier if he had some more tragedy in his character, like Jason, who is down here. But Michael killed his sister because he wanted to, and then he keeps killing women and other people because he wants to. And he's also like a supernatural, unstoppable monster. So, you know, fine enough placement for Michael. Pennywise, what is he? Intergalactic? Like he's a cosmic being, I guess that's the best way to put it, like an eldritch horror kind of thing, who instills fear into his food to make it taste better. And, you know, he eats people, or sentient beings, I suppose, is probably his prey. You know, birds of a feather, all these ones right here. So, you know, Pennywise, good spot. I had him high before too. Agent Smith, he wanted to hack into the Matrix and make the world his playground, and he was going to do so at the expense of everybody else in it. So Agent Smith, I also had him in S tier up here before too, around these guys. So these ones, they shifted down just because of some new additions and some, like, you know, reconsideration for what these other picks did, but he's still in the same general area that I had him in. Albert Wesker was a new addition to the list, and, you know, sunglasses, they go together. Wish we could have like Gendo and Captain Vidal next to them, but they're placed where they're placed. Albert Wesker tried to become this super being that was going to pretty much usher in the end of the world, or at least close to it, and then rule over it as this quasi-god. So pretty similar to Agent Smith in that respect, which is, you know, why they're next to each other. Now Tywin, I always had Tywin kind of low in S. I still had him in S tier, but I had him in low S tier, just because you got that kind of like family element. You know, he does do some good things for Westeros when he's Hand of the King both times. Not so much the second time, but the first time he does, when he's Hand of the King to Aerys, he does do some good for the realm. But what he oversees and the people he oversees is nothing short of terrifying. So, you know, you guys said he deserved a bump up, and I can agree. It's S tier is interesting because all of the people or characters or entities in this tier, they're irredeemable. Like they have little to no justification for their actions, and perhaps a little bit of sympathy in their backstories. But when you're in S tier, it's like scale and origin. You know, like the root of all evil. Those things will determine a higher spot. But really, any of these could go anywhere depending on your personal opinions on characters, especially in S tier specifically. That kind of goes away as you start getting into more nuanced or like complicated characters who don't commit as many evil acts as some of the characters in this tier. But for sure, you know, Tywin being moved up quite a few spots is fine. Totally fine. Now, Commodus, I mean, he didn't accomplish as much as Tywin, you know, scale-wise, but Mad Emperor, who was pretty much only interested in the arena, the Colosseum, the Gladiators arena, and couldn't care less about running the Roman Empire, and he was insane, is a light way to put it. So putting Tywin and Commodus next to each other as, you know, fellow rulers of, well, Tywin was never king, but he was pretty much king, of an empire, a kingdom, makes sense. Same with Joffrey, who isn't really who he is because of Tywin. He is who he is because Robert was kind of a bad father. Cersei was a horrible person, and, you know, she was largely responsible for raising him. And he didn't have much time to do too much. You know, so if Joffrey had lived to be, let's say, 50, he might have been way the hell up here. But he did die young, and he didn't have as much time to accomplish that much, so he's still very much S tier and deserves to be around these guys. But yeah, Joffrey was also a new addition, and that's a fine spot for Joffrey. Now, Immortan Joe, I had Immortan Joe next to Tywin before, and he's still around him, so, you know, that's perfectly fine with me. Also a despotic, post-apocalyptic ruler who has this strange harem that is, I don't remember exactly why he has the harem. Is it just for pleasure, or was it to have a baby? I don't know. But yeah, he's horrible. You know, in terms of scale, not the worst, but he also did some good things for his people, if I recall correctly. But yeah, Immortan Joe is just a terror, a wasteland terror who's fighting, torturing, conquering everything you can imagine that someone with that face would do. Scar I had above Tywin last time, but, you know, the Disney ones are interesting. I don't think so. I have three characters, Disney characters I've covered. Frollo, Syndrome, Scar. I think that's it so far. But the funny thing about Disney characters is there isn't typically too much nuance to them. They're more often than not pretty damn evil with no good reason for being evil. And that's the case with Scar. So it might seem a little strange that a lion is up here with all these guys. But what does Scar do? He kills his brother, takes over an entire kingdom, runs it into the ground, causes the starvation of his people, the destruction of the environment, and probably, you know, had his hyenas murder a few people in the time in between. So there is nothing good to say about Scar, even though he is a lion. And he's just in it for himself and in it for the power. Excuse me. He's just in it for himself and in it for the power. So, you know, that's why he's an S tier. But I understand why you guys wanted to move down a bit, you know, below Tywin. That makes sense. The Armitage family, was that a new addition? No, it wasn't. They were also in this general vicinity when I did my list. Nothing good to say about the Armitage family either. You know, they are in the business of kidnapping or seducing black people to cut out their brains. And wait, do they cut their brains out? I think they just do like this weird ritual, like consciousness transfer surgery, if I'm not mistaken. But no, I'm pretty sure they die. Anyway, the point is they take people and they insert their family members into their bodies so they can have their dream lives. You know, they wanted to be a fast runner or whatever multiple reasons they have in the film. But, you know, there's no good reason for them doing it. They're just doing it to prolong their own lives at the expense of other people. So, you know, Armitage family in S tier. Stephen and Calvin are right next to each other, as they should be. Now, I think I might have had Stephen on my last list. No, I did have Stephen above Calvin. I had him above Calvin too. Obviously not as bad scale-wise as the people above them, but Calvin goes above Stephen because, I mean, Stephen goes above Calvin because, you know, Calvin was at least born into the business, and that's what he was taught to do. Stephen was also born into Calvin's family's business, but he's made the conscious choice to betray his people and do whatever he can to improve his own life at the expense of every other person on that plantation. So yeah, that's what makes Stephen a bit worse than Calvin, but, you know, they're both horrid racists who oversee a slaving operation. And then Hans Landa is, you know, he was also on my list. Was he higher? I had him higher than them before. But you guys, I believe you guys were saying that, you know, these guys are a little bit more personally responsible for a lot more misery. See, I could put Hans above Stephen and Calvin. But again, I'm not going to move anything. Maybe we will move him when we do the next update on May 19th. Don't forget. But yeah, Hans is in it for himself. The Jew hunter. Who knows how many people he's killed. An opportunist who doesn't really care about people. No empathy, really. Extremely good at his job. Definitely deserves to be an S tier. Captain Vidal is another previous placement that I had down in A tier. And the reason I put him in A tier is because, you know, if you compare Vidal and Hans, they're actually quite similar. They, you know, they're both the, what do I say, a representative of a fascist regime, in this case, Francisco Franco's of Spain. And I keep, man, I'm going to probably forget to do this quite a lot as we go forward, but I keep forgetting to say what they're from, the characters are from, because I'm sure most of you don't, or not most of you, I'm sure a lot of you aren't sure where every single one of these characters are from, let alone who they are. So Captain Vidal is from Pan's Labyrinth. And the reason I had him in A tier is because, unlike Hans, he actually seems to believe in what he's doing and that he's doing the right thing for Spain. Hans is just doing what he's doing for himself. Whereas Vidal is like, no, this is how the world is supposed to be, and I'm making the world a better place. He's just doing it in a horrifying way. But, you know, what he does is terrible, and the institution that he represents that wants to make the world a better place is, you know, one of the most reviled ideologies, parties, whatever you want to call it, ever. So I understand. People have been saying because, you know, he was on the first list because he was actually quite early, one of the earliest videos that I made. And people have been saying ever since then to move him up, so that's fine. I get it. I understand. Cameron Alexander is from American History X, and he is the man who runs the white supremacist gang. He runs the white supremacist gang that brainwashes Derek and his brother, and many, many other people. So as a man who is responsible for corrupting many youths and turning them into white supremacists, you know, he definitely deserves to be where he's at. I know that I placed him before. Let's see if I can find his picture. Where did I put him? I couldn't have put him that. Oh no, I think I remember what we did. I didn't have him on the list before. I think I was just kind of lumping him in with this, and we added him this time around, or maybe I forgot to put him in last time. I don't remember which one. But yeah, so Cameron, as a racist corrupter in charge of a racist gang, he, rightfully so, deserves to be around these other racist guys. Now next is, his name is David. That's right, David. Okay, David from The Last of Us, who is a cult leader who was a school teacher. Well, I don't remember in the game if they expanded on this part of him in the game, but I know in the show they said that he was a school teacher before the apocalypse, And he's now a cult leader who enjoys his little girls. And considering that he was a teacher before the apocalypse, that means he might have been doing much the same thing before then. And, you know, he oversees a cult that... Is it a cult? I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it's a cult. Oversees a cult that murders people and eats people. And he's a child lover. So, you know, that's quite the appropriate spot for him. He was up much higher when I had placed him last time around. But, you know, considering who's above him, it makes sense that he's here now. And then we got another cult leader, Roman Castevet, from Rosemary's Baby. Oh no. I just noticed something here. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so actually, when I first started recording this, in the first like 10 minutes, my computer actually blue screened, which is quite concerning. But I noticed that I somehow, after it blue screened, it cut out these Scream characters and the Fireflies and Jason's mom. So I put those back in real quick. But anyway, Roman, I think if I recall correctly, Roman Castevet from Rosemary's Baby. I just put him here to represent like his whole cult. You know, he is the head of it. But, you know, they try to birth the Antichrist, and they succeed by manipulating poor Rosemary. And yeah, for, you know, manipulating a woman into having this hell child that will usher in, you know, the apocalypse in an age of darkness is pretty bad. So, you know, a new addition to the list, but up here, I still haven't re-uploaded the Rosemary's Baby video. I'm sorry. Paramount has been a thorn in my side lately, and I just haven't had the time to do what I need to do with that video. But maybe this month I'll get to it. Next is Jeremiah Sand, who is also a cult leader. Self-absorbed, pretty much just think Charles Manson, but in a different spin on him. There's nothing good to say about Jeremiah Sand, and Mandy is one of my favorite movies of the last like 10 years. So if you guys haven't seen Mandy, make sure you go watch Mandy. And they actually put a lot of effort into fleshing out Jeremiah's backstory through like songs, and I believe it was like a biographical tape he made. And I talk about that a lot in the video. So, you know, go watch Mandy, and afterwards, if you want to learn a little more about Jeremiah, go watch the video I made on him. Next is Lord Summerhall, who from The Wicker Man, and also a cult leader who is very intelligent and is quite aware that the cult, the pagan cult, I believe it is, yeah, pagan cult that his family oversees, his grandfather started, I believe. They sacrifice people to better the harvest, provide good fortune to their people. And he knows that it's all bull, you know, but he chooses to placate his people with a sacrifice anyway, because, you know, if he doesn't, then he's going to lose all his power base. So I forget the cop's name in The Wicker Man who they end up sacrificing, but, you know, that poor man is strung along for the sake of a false religion that this man knows is false, but is choosing to prop up anyway and engages in human sacrifice. So, pretty bad. Hoyt Volker from Far Cry 3. Gang leader, drug lord, sadistic monster who just does what he wants to anyone he wants to and kills a whole bunch of people. Nothing good to say about Hoyt, and that's why he's here. Another new addition. and a good addition to S tier, I would say. Carmine Falcone is next, and he is from the newest Batman movie, the latest Batman movie at the time I'm making this video. And I had him in A tier because he, there's a lot of criminals in A tier. That's that's part of my justification for A tier, for putting some people in A tier, is if they're career criminals. And that's what Carmine Falcone is, but he is a lot more personally malicious, and he's not necessarily just a guy who's committing crimes for the money. He's far worse than that. And I had him in A because of my career criminal rationale. But you guys thought he should go up a bit, and putting him by Hoyt makes sense. Hoyt's a lot more unhinged than Carmine is, and sadistic. But that's why Carmine's been moved up. And Noah Cross also moved up with him, because I had Noah Cross in A tier, but again, career criminal who's a lot more personally malicious. And you guys wanted him bumped up, and so we bumped him up with Carmine, which, putting them together, that makes sense. Noah Cross from Chinatown. There we go. I didn't forget that time. And then Frollo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, another Disney villain, but again, what is there good to say about Frollo? He's a horrific judge. I mean, he raised Quasimodo, but he only did it because he thought that he was going to get in lose God's favor if he didn't. So, represses the Romany in this story and covets a woman who doesn't want him and tries to take her by force. And, I had him in S tier previously, and I had him next to Commodus, but, we've had a lot of additions and shuffles, so, that's pretty middle of the pack. S tier is perfect for Frollo. I always, people ask, and I'll probably make a video on him, not soon, but at some point in the next year, maybe, about Crollo Lucifer. I think they put an L in. It's not Lucifer, it's Lucilfer, from Hunter x Hunter, which is actually one of my favorite animes. But I always want to say Crollo or Frollo when I'm talking about either one of them. So yeah, that happens often. Johann Liebert, the monster from Monster. I had him in A previously, but Johann is like the serial killer to end all serial killers, a complete genius mastermind who, might have spelled the end of the world if he wasn't stopped. So, you guys wanted him bumped up, so he got bumped up, and it makes sense when you consider all the horrific things in his character. Another one that I had in A tier was the Joker from The Dark Knight, and I put him in A tier because it's implied in the movie that he has like a tragic backstory, but I'm pretty sure when you guys were talking about it, that's hearsay, and what he does is, he causes chaos, destruction, murder for no reason, just because he wants to. He thinks it's fun. So if you eliminate the backstory, and even with the backstory, what he does is pretty bad. So, you guys wanted him moved up again, and I moved him up because it makes sense. Anton Chigurh was S tier before. He'll always be S tier. I'm sure all of you have seen No Country for Old Men. Anton is an unstoppable killing machine, this weird, almost otherworldly force that just makes no sense. And he has no reason for doing what he's doing. The thrill of the hunt, that's his reason for killing people. And, he deserves to be where he's at. Lalo Salamanca was a new addition. No, he wasn't new. I had already covered Lalo when I had made this one. But I had Lalo in A. I again, career criminal rationale, but Lalo is personally sadistic and cruel and not a great dude. great character. I love his character. Like, he's probably, I don't know. I'd say Gus is my favorite character in Breaking Bad, but Lalo's a close second. I guess he's not from Breaking Bad. He's from Better Call Saul. My mistake. But, you know, Lalo's cool. He's a cool character, but cool doesn't mean he's not horrifically evil, and he certainly is. Next is Kaiser Sose from The Usual Suspects, who I use this image because it's implied that, it's funny that Kevin Spacey's next to him, or John Doe from Seven. But I use this picture because it's implied that Kaiser Sose might just be a myth, and Verbal Kint might not actually be Kaiser Sose. He might be someone who used the myth to get out of going to prison. So it's not known 100% if Verbal was Kaiser Sose, but the legends about him are terrifying. You know, he's a crime lord who's done some pretty bad stuff. So, you know, he's still in S tier. He just got moved around because, again, a lot of additions and shuffles. John Doe, I had in A tier. I had him in A tier because he's clearly got something, there's something affecting his judgment. You know, some kind of mental illness. But what he does in Seven is gruesome. And there's no justification for what he does. So you guys wanted him moved up, and that's fine. You know, if you've seen Seven, I'm not going too in depth with all of these characters because, you know, I know not everyone has seen all these things. I do need to say enough to place them though, and he's pretty much a mass murderer, serial killer, better word for it, who makes almost Jigsaw-esque games for his victims, and yeah, putting him right there is fine. I understand why you guys wanted him moved up. Patrick Bateman, I also think, I had him in A tier too. Again, this is because, like, he's clearly got something going on that's affecting what he does. But there is no justification for who he is and what he does, really. And that's the thing about, like mental illnesses. When a villain has a mental illness, sometimes it can be an excuse. Not an excuse, but it can soften their character because they're so out of their minds. Like, you know, they're not operating lucidly, that you have to give them some sympathy and place them lower. And a mental illness is never an excuse. It's just an explanation why someone might do what they do. And, you know, Patrick Bateman has antisocial personality disorder, which, you know, you might be more familiar with the term psychopath or sociopath. But even though he has that, what he does is, there's no justification for it. So, you know, S tier's perfectly fine putting Patrick here. Yu Jin, I think, I had Yu Jin in S tier too. I had him at the bottom because there is a slight amount of tragedy in his backstory. You know, he lost his sister/lover to a rumor. But he imprisons a guy, I think it's 10 years. He imprisons a guy for 10 years to play out this complicated revenge plot. So, you know, he's an S tier because there's no good reason for why he did what he did. And it's very hard to find any sympathy for poor old Yu Jin. Max Cady is one that I had in A, and the only reason that I had Max Cady in A, Max Cady from Cape Fear, the remake of Cape Fear, I should say. The only reason I had Max Cady in A is because in the film you learn that he has an actual legitimate grievance with the lawyer who he's targeting. And that's because he got sentenced. I don't remember if it was he got sentenced for a crime he didn't do, or it was not as bad as they portrayed it to be. So he got locked up way longer than he should have been. So when he gets out, he goes on a warpath to get revenge against this lawyer who locked him up longer than he should have been. So that's why I was like, okay, maybe he deserves A, because that's not good. No one deserves to get locked up longer than they should be. But he is a revenge-driven criminal who's committed crimes in the past, and there's not really much good to say about him aside from the fact that he should have got a lighter sentence, but he still committed a crime. So we moved him up to S tier based on the fact that there is just nothing good to say about him or what he does, even with the grievance factored in. So there he is, Max Cady in S tier. Same kind of deal happened with Norman Stanfield. He corrupt cop who's unhinged, and takes advantage of his position and other people to just do whatever the hell he wants to do. And he was in A tier because I don't really remember why I put him in A tier, honestly. I think just because he's so unhinged. Like, how much is him actually doing it and how much is his drug addiction fueling what he does? But regardless, he's not a good person. Nothing really good to say about him, so we moved him up for that reason. Same with Frank Booth. They're kind of birds of a feather. Frank Booth from Blue Velvet and Norman Stanfield. Also not a cop, but he's a gang leader who's addicted to drugs and is very bizarre. Is a very bizarre character, and I'll have to say that I've said it multiple times when people have asked, but Blue Velvet, out of all the new material, the new to me material that I've covered on the channel, Blue Velvet has been my favorite, for sure. I think Frank Booth is just a fun character to watch. Obviously what he does isn't fun, but it's a very interesting movie, as David Lynch movies tend to be. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend you go watch it. Lil Zay is next on the list, and I also had him in S tier last time around. He was a little more towards the bottom, and he still is. We're below the bottom half. But he was, the only thing you can say for Lil Zay is he didn't, like anyone, he didn't choose to be born where he was, and the environment he raised in was beyond horrific. And it made him into who he is. So he's really violent and commits a lot of horrible crimes in City of God, which is the film he's from. So he does deserve to be in S tier, and this is a fine enough spot for him. Same with Marlowe. They're really similar, Marlowe and Zay. Marlowe is just as bad as Lil Zay, maybe a little less than him, but yeah. Think of Marlowe as the American Lil Zay, Marlowe Stanfield from The Wire. Green Goblin, I had him in A tier, just because Norman is his name, right? I just don't know his full name. Norman Osborn. I got it. He's kind of consumed by the gas. Is it a gas? Whatever changes him into the Green Goblin. So, I mean, if you ranked Norman, you can't rank Norman, I guess, because he didn't want to be the Green Goblin. So if you just rank the Green Goblin, what is there good to say about the Green Goblin? Like, nothing. He's just causing terror because he wants to. Killing people, destroying things. Green Goblin, Put him in S tier. Makes sense. I had him in A because I factored in Norman, I'm pretty sure. But the Green Goblin isn't really Norman, he's the Green Goblin. So I was perfectly fine moving him up. And then we have Simon Phoenix from Demolition Man, who is just a gang leader / mass murderer who is sent to the future and wants to take over the world, pretty much. Cause havoc, mayhem, get money, get power, get women, whatever he wants. And he was doing the same thing before he was frozen. I believe they were frozen in the movie. That's how they... That was what they were sentenced to, was like cryo prison. Yeah, cryo prison is what it was. So he's a new addition, right? Yeah. New addition to the list. Made it into S tier. Same with Caster Troy. He's not like... I don't think he was as ambitious. And don't you love this picture, by the way? Nick Cage in all his glory. Nick Cage is just the best. But he wasn't nearly as bad as Simon, I don't think. But still the same crime lord doing what he does because he wants to, and that's about it, you know. Julian Slowick's an interesting one that I've had in S the whole time. And I've had him in S because, you know, it's kind of weird. Oh, just a chef in S tier with all these guys. That seems off, right? But he's pretty much killing people because they don't appreciate his art form. That's what it really boils down to. And that's not a good reason to kill people. It just isn't. There's no good justification there for what Julian does in the menu. So he's in S tier. I had him kind of in the same spot, general area, so he didn't change too much. Syndrome from The Incredibles. Syndrome. The only thing you can say about Syndrome is that it was Mr. Incredible's fault that he became Syndrome. When he handled the overenthusiastic young buddy the way he did. But Syndrome is, as an adult, that doesn't soften his character nearly enough. He wants to kill all the superheroes and make himself the only, or no, make everybody super. After he's had his fun with his manufactured super technology. And he's going to sell all that technology to people to get filthy rich. So, mass murderer who is egocentric and money grubbing. Not too much good to say about Syndrome. He was also, oh no, New Edition? New Edition. Was he a New Edition? Yeah. He was a New Edition. So, solid S tier. Bill from Kill Bill, I had an A tier. And I think I corrected it in this one. Did I? No. Yeah, I corrected it. I knew I was going to need to correct it regardless of the stream. Because, you know, a lot of you commented something that I forgot, how Bill kills, what's her name? His wife, his former wife in Kill Bill. I forget her name. But he kills all her friends when he finds out she's getting married to someone new. And that's what took him from being just an assassin, like career criminal, that would kind of go down here with someone like Vincent, up to S tier for the selfishness of his actions, you know. And then, so this next string of characters, you guys decided that we should rank not just Ghostface, like the Ghostface persona from Scream, but all the people who have taken on the Ghostface persona. And I'm not going to talk about each of these individually, but essentially, so the Ghostface persona is just an excuse for people to commit mass murder. So Ghostface in general is up here for that reason. And then these people who have taken on the Ghostface persona are up here because they didn't really have any good reason for becoming Ghostface. Like, they just wanted to make the franchise, the Scream franchise in the Scream universe better. For example, with this guy. And with these two. So these guys are all similar in that aspect where they just were murdering using Ghostface because, you know, they had selfish reasons for doing so. The few that are down here, there's a little bit more sympathy for their characters, which is why we put them here, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But Zed is next from Pulp Fiction, and Zed is a serial assaulter. You know, I try not to say the R word to refer to, you know, forcing yourself on someone, because YouTube is not a big fan of that word. But yeah, there's nothing good to say about Zed. He takes people and does what he wants with them, and that's about it. Tortures them, assaults them, what have you. And I had Zed New Edition. Zed was a New Edition. No, he wasn't. He wasn't a New Edition. He was not. Where did I have him before? Interesting. It's hard for me to find him. Maybe I forgot to put him on when I did this update. That happens sometimes. But anyway, regardless of where I placed him last time, he does deserve to be in S tier. So now Gendo and Light. So Light, Gendo is a new addition. But Gendo, you know, he missed his wife so much that he was willing to pretty much destroy the entire world to get her back. Or to be with her. So that's not a good reason for destroying the entire world, which is why we decided that Gendo should go in S tier. I had Light in A tier for the longest time, and Light is probably, when I talk to people about any character that I've covered, Light always comes up. You know, he's a very popular character, and it also has to do with what I said about him in the video. I'm a little more forgiving with Light because I take into account the fact that he's really young and naive, and he sees the world in a really black and white way. And I know that when I was younger, I also had some black and white ideas about the world. But as you mature, you learn that the world isn't black and white. It's a lot more nuanced than that. And that changes your perspective, and you don't think the same way you did when you're 30, for example, as you did when you were 16. So Light, the 16-year-old, gets a little bit of credit from me, I guess you could say, for being young. Because I think that if Light was 10 years older, he might not have done what he did in Death Note. But what he does in Death Note is terrifying. You know, he's murdering people at random to suit his goal of making the world a perfect place. And, you know, you guys, in plenty of people, have told me that they think Light is worse than I think he is. Honestly, I think he is really worse, really horrible, which is why I had him in high A tier before. I just take that young factor into account and softens him for me a little bit. But you guys wanted him up in S, and I'm fine with that. You know, he was high A tier anyway, so bottom of S tier is a good spot for Light, I think. All right, so we finally gotten out of S tier, and on to the next most populated tier, which is A tier. And here we have up first at the top a new addition, Imhotep from The Mummy, who, the reason he's an A, we decided, is because, you know, the only reason he became this evil entity is because he loved a woman that he wasn't allowed to love. So he did whatever he could to be with that woman. But when he got, you know, imprisoned and then revived, he becomes this world-ending apocalyptic monster. So even if there is some sympathy to be found in his character, what he does and what he's trying to accomplish is terrifying. So, you know, high A tier makes a lot of sense. Davy Jones is kind of similar. I had Davy Jones in like mid A tier. But, you know, they're very similar, Imhotep and Davy Jones, with a love factor especially. But, you know, you guys thought Davy Jones was a little more horrible than the middle of A tier. You know, should be closer to S tier. And that's fine. I agree with that. You know, he has a job to ferry the dead, and he completely corrupts that job and kills people and then prevents them from moving on at the same time. So, you know, next to Imhotep seems pretty fair. Thanos has traditionally been my top of A tier. I actually moved Jobu Tupaki from Everything Everywhere All at Once above him last time around. But Thanos from the MCU. The only reason Thanos is in S tier, because, you know, what Thanos is trying to do is kill half the population of the universe to make it better, more sustainable, I should say, for the other half. And killing half of everyone and every creature, I'm sure that included creatures, if I'm not mistaken, in the entire universe, that's a lot of living beings. So, you know, you'd think that he would go in S tier. But Thanos really, really, really believes that what he's doing is the right thing. He's not doing it for himself. He thinks he's doing it for everybody else. So that's what puts him in A tier. You know, what he does is evil. And there's no excuse for it. But at least he's not doing it like Palpatine would kill half of the universe because he wants to rule the universe. You know, Thanos is killing half the universe because he wants to help. So that's why he's in A tier. And he's stayed at the top of A tier. You guys let me keep him here, I should say, because some of you, if I remember correctly, some of you said that he should go higher. But you know, I stand by the wanting to help aspect of him that places him here. Count Dooku and Darth Vader I had in the middle of A tier next to Darth Maul before, but you guys, you know, thought what the scale of what they've done is way too high to place them lower, and you know, that's fine. I mean, Count Dooku, it was the head of the Separatists in the Clone Wars, and he helped Palpatine to, you know, destroy trillions of lives, I believe, is what is the amount that perished in the Clone Wars, if not billions. So having him there is fine. And then Darth Vader was responsible for overseeing you know, the enforcement of I guess law, you could say, or the stamping out of opposition, like the rebels for the Empire. And he killed a lot of people personally and ordered a lot of people to be killed in that capacity. And he also destroyed the entire Jedi Order. So, you know, placing him higher, that's fine by me. I agree with that one. Jobu Tupaki from Everything Everywhere All at Once. An interdimensional traveler who causes misery in multiple dimensions, kind of similar to Bill Cipher, but she was pushed into becoming this person because of her strenuous family life. And there's a lot that goes into the themes and everything of Everything Everywhere All at Once and why she became this person. So, you know, it'd be a lot to talk about right now, but I have made a video on it. Surprise, surprise. And it's a really good movie. I enjoy it. I personally resonated with that movie quite a lot. So definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. But yes, she deserves to be in A, even though she's interdimensionally horrific like Bill Cipher is. Yevon from Final Fantasy X, which is my favorite game of all time, by the way, which is why it was I think the third or fourth video that I made. But anyway, Yevon was the leader of a city whose city got in a war with a highly more advanced technological power, and he knew his city was going to die, and his people were going to die. So to preserve that city, he sacrificed them all and preserved a copy, I think it's a copy, or just their consciousness in a dream state of his city, Zanarkand. And afterwards, you know, sin was born, and it continues to destroy the world unless the summoners sacrifice themselves to become the final Aeon every 10 years. So he's not just bad on, like, he sacrificed all his people, but he also made this monster that continues to destroy the world. But his intentions were kind of noble, and he's become a tragic figure in a way because he's now a slave to sin. Like, this image right here is a parasitic creature that he's become, and he's basically devoid of any thought, no will of his own. He's just existing for his dream, and, you know, caused a lot of misery. But for those reasons, A tier. I've had him in A tier this whole time, and he's stayed there. You guys thought he should stay there too. Now, Richmond Valentine from Kingsman. I had him in high A, so he's in about the same spot. So was Ozymandias, and they're both similar in that they wanted to try to save the world, kind of like Thanos wanted to save the universe, by doing horrible things. In Richmond's case, he wanted to kill off a majority of the population to prevent global warming, to prevent climate change from destroying the Earth. Ozymandias, he orchestrated the mass murder of millions of people in New York. I don't know if it's New York in the story. It's a New York-like city. In order to stave off nuclear war, impending nuclear war. And they both had good intentions, they just went about it in the wrong way. Like, in a very wrong way. So that's why they're there, and they've pretty much stayed where they were at. You guys thought Richmond was a little worse than Ozymandias, and I agree, because Richmond was going to kill pretty much everyone on Earth. Like, almost everyone, and Ozymandias only, I should say, but in comparison to Richmond, it is only like 8 million people or something like that, if I remember the number right. You can let me know down below. These next three are Ra's al Ghul, Talia al Ghul, and Bane from the Dark Knight trilogy of Batman movies. And they also had, like, good intentions, I guess you could say. They thought, you know, the world was corrupt, and their order stamps out corruption, and, you know, to make sure humanity stays pure, is the deal with these guys. So, you know, kind of good intentions, but they kill a lot of people, and their intentions do not justify their actions. Another one is Dr. Raymond Cocteau from Demolition Man. And he is kind of similar to these guys too. You know, he's trying to make the world a better place in the way that he thinks it should be better. But the way he's doing it is not great, and is built on repression and social engineering. Negative social engineering. I mean, social engineering just negative in general. I don't know. I don't know why I have that in my head, but we'll just say social engineering. And yeah, there's no good reason for him doing what he wants to do, except it's the way he wants the world to be, so he's going to make it that way. Now, Jigsaw, John Kramer, hasn't moved much. Oh, this was a new addition, by the way, Dr. Raymond Cocteau. Jigsaw hasn't moved much at all. And anyone who's seen Saw, you know why. He does a lot of horrific things to a lot of people, but he does believe that he's making people's lives better by doing so. So that's why he's an A and not S. Logan Roy is a new addition. Business magnate, I guess that's the way to put it. In charge of a massive news corporation inspired by Rupert Murdoch, who owns, I forget the company that he owns, but I know that company is responsible for, like, Fox News. And he is responsible for influencing the press in a way that suits his own aims. And it's said in the show that he has influenced events in such a way that he's actually, like, caused wars to happen. And the only reason he does those kind of things is to make himself more money. So, not as horrific as, like, say, these guys up here, which is why he's here, but having that much of an influence over people's lives and negatively impacting them that way, just so you can get rich, is pretty bad. And, you know, A tier is a fine spot for him. Andrew Ryan was already on the list, and he was in... Was he not? Oh, he was an A tier. I had him in A tier. I had him in low A tier, though. And I think I had him there because Andrew's whole shtick is he's also trying to make his world a better place, create a utopia. But he totally ruins it, and the way he runs it is, you know, inefficient, bad. It's just a real bad idea that he has. And he ends up taking the ship down with him, causing a lot of death and misery. But he didn't really mean to do that. It's just, that's kind of what happened because of the system he tried to create. But he was also like a tyrant in, oh man, I'm forgetting the name of the city in BioShock. Rapture. He's kind of a tyrant in Rapture. So, you know, that's why A tier, even though he didn't mean to do some of the things he did mean to do some of the other things he did. Buffalo Bill, serial killer, with a case of, I forget what exactly the disorder he is, but, you know, he's trying to take women's skin to make himself a skin suit, and there's not really a good reason to do that, but he is obviously, you know, not all there. And they got to give him some credit for that. So that's why he's in high A tier. And he didn't really move that much. Not really. Moved up a couple spots, but in the same general vicinity. And Hannibal Lecter was actually above him. I had him above him before, but you know, you guys said he's a little, he's not as bad as Buffalo Bill, is what you guys said, essentially. But he's got a lot of tragedy in his backstory, especially if you watch the sequels, plural? Right? Yeah. Well, you know, Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal. So, whatever you want to call him. And the prequel, which details how he went through hell in Eastern Europe. I think it was Lithuania when he was younger. So, as bad as he is eating people and being a serial killer, manipulator, you know, he's got a lot of tragedy in his backstory. So he's there. It hasn't really changed much. Riddler, kind of the same deal. Tragic backstory. Became this mass murderer because the world had treated him so poorly and he wanted to get back at the world. So, A, you know, he's been an A and he'll likely stay there. Around here too, I imagine. Raul Silva, he's kind of like Max Cady in that he had a grievance, but his grievance was way more understandable than Max Cady's was. He was a member. Raul Silva from Skyfall, James Bond movie. He was abandoned by the agency basically and left to die. So he goes on a path to revenge to get back at the agency. And so for that reason, he's an A, but he still does, you know, murders a lot of people and destroys a lot of things. And yeah, he's not a good person. Not good at all. Not enough sympathy to lower him, but there's enough to keep him here at least. And he was a new addition too, that we put right there. Annie Wilkes is one that moved up quite a bit. Right? Because I'm pretty sure... Wait, no. Oh, no, she didn't. She moved up quite a bit in this update video that I did before this one. Because you guys had pointed out in the comment section that she was a baby killer when she was a nurse at the hospital, and I had forgot about that. So, you know, if you've seen Misery, which is the story Annie's from, you'll know she tortures a man and she's also a baby killer. So... yeah, good spot for her. But yeah, again, she's got operating under a mental illness too, which is what keeps her from being like up here. And then this next string of Scream villains, impersonators, they all have some sort of tragic backstory or better justification for doing what they did than these guys up here. These three want to avenge this guy, who is this guy's son and their brother, but he doesn't deserve to be avenged, you know. But because they're not just killing just because, that's why they're an A. And then Billy Loomis and his mom, same kind of deal. Oh man, I forget why he does what he does, but I know that it's some tragedy is why Billy is who he is, and then his mom, similar, you know, her son died and she wants to get back at the people who killed her son. So, you know, better than these 5 are better than these. I don't know how many this is. That seems like 9. Yeah, I think it's 9. So that's why they're here. Ready or Not, the Ladomas family from Ready or Not, I had them in S tier. You guys said they deserved A tier. I don't remember exactly why, but I'm assuming it's because this is a generation of a family that is beholden to demonic forces that a previous generation of their family entered into a pact with. So while they're guilty of like furthering that or keeping using those powers, they're sympathetic in a way that they're kind of forced to, even though they subject a woman and other people to, games that end up murdering them if they choose, or if they roll the wrong thing. I don't remember, or pick it out of a hat, something like that. So, you know, I get why you guys wanted to move them down a bit, but they're pretty bad. And Ready or Not's a great movie. That was the favorite movie of one of my Discord mods. A fan who had become a Discord mod when I first opened the Discord. By the way, if you want to join the Discord, the link is down below in the description. But yeah, he was one of my original Discord mods. His username was Blaine Inagaki, and he unfortunately passed away from cancer 2 years ago. So, you know, I dedicated that video to him, and, you know, another shout out to Blaine, wherever you are. Next is Darth Maul. And he was pretty much here. Yeah, he didn't really move. He was in A tier. He's in A tier because didn't commit nearly as many crimes as these guys did. You know, the other apprentices of Palpatine. But he did do enough to make him still in A tier. And he's a little tragic, more tragic than Dooku. Perhaps not as tragic as Anakin. No, maybe a little more. He was pretty much raised by Palpatine, and that's not a good person to be raised by any means. Alex DeLarge, I had him in B tier. No, C tier. I had him in C tier, and that's because Alex is pretty much a product of his environment. And he was so young that, you know, he had a chance to become a better person. But really, it's like who Alex is all determined by the world he was born into. But you guys pointed out, and other people have pointed out in, you know, the comment sections of other update videos, that Alex's crimes are pretty horrific, and for that reason he should be moved up. So I'm fine with this placement. You know, this is a fine enough placement. Maybe I personally would still lower him a bit, but, you know, I get it. I definitely get it. O-Dog, it was a new addition from Menace to Society. And he's kind of like Lil Zay and Marlowe, but just to a lesser degree. You know, born in a bad environment that influenced who he is. But he didn't do nearly as much as these two did, which is why we decided he should go here. And then, you know, Bishop from Juice is kind of similar to O-Dog. You know, he was influenced by his world. He felt he needed to become this big man to make it in the hard world he lived in. And so, you know, he's done enough to keep him in A. And, you know, we decided he should go here next to O-Dog, which makes sense. So next is Frank Costello from The Departed, and he is another crime lord, gang leader, in the film The Departed, and career criminal who corrupts young kids into becoming, you know, his lackeys and commits crimes and kills people, and, you know, he's not so a common theme with people in S tier is like they are evil because they want to be evil. They want to commit evil acts. A career criminal isn't necessarily in it to be evil. They're in it for themselves. You know, they'll just do whatever it takes to enrich themselves or get more power. And it's not, if they could do it in a legitimate way, they probably would. You know, they're not out there specifically to harm people. They harm people because it's an easy way to get what they want. So, you know, that's why characters like Frank are here. That's why someone like Gus is here, who is similar, who didn't move much at all. Frank also didn't move very much at all either. That's why Angel Eyes from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is here. That's why Bill the Butcher is here. That's why Walter White is here. That's why Dutch Vanderland is here. That's why Stringer Bell is here. Tony Soprano. What's his name? What's his name? I'm gonna have to look it up because I don't remember. So, cue the cut. Marcellus Wallace. That's why Marcellus Wallace is here, and I knew that the whole time. I didn't look it up. I promise. That's why Michael Corleone is here. So I could talk about each and every one of these guys and how they're criminals and they got a little bit of sympathy in their backstory, but they're not necessarily evil and doing evil things because they want to be evil, but for money. But, you know, I'm not going to say that 10 times. So these guys up till here and then beyond. So Warden Norton, actually, you know, he's kind of similar. He's not a crime lord. He's the warden of a prison, and he's pretty much a crime lord. You know, he's doing what he's doing because it makes his life better, and that's what he wants. But also briefly, I'll just say where they're from because, you know, I want to make sure you guys know who these characters are. This is Gus Fring from Breaking Bad, Angel Eyes from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York, Walter White from Breaking Bad, Dutch Vanderland, Red Dead Redemption 2, Stringer Bell from The Wire, Tony Soprano from The Sopranos, Marcellus Wallace from Pulp Fiction, Michael Corleone from The Godfather, Hans Gruber from, what is it called? It's a Christmas movie. Die Hard. Hans Gruber from Die Hard, Warden Norton from The Shawshank Redemption, Alonzo Harris from Training Day, Vic Mackey from The Shield, Tony Montana from Scarface, Vincent Vega from Pulp Fiction, Thomas Shelby from Peaky Blinders, and then we have one that's kind of not a criminal running a criminal operation, Little Bill Daggett from Unforgiven. I'm not going to look it up. I know what it is. See, I was right. It's Unforgiven. I shouldn't have looked it up. I didn't look it up. But yeah, Little Bill Daggett from Unforgiven. He's a corrupt sheriff who kind of runs his town the way he wants it to and doesn't really care about anyone else. And he's very inefficient at that. And unfair. He's an unfair lawman. If I remember correctly, yeah, he causes the events of the film because he isn't willing to side with a prostitute who's been viciously mutilated and instead just lets her mutilator go, which is pretty bad, pretty horrific. And then English Bob, and then we're back to a couple criminals. English Bob is from Unforgiven 2, and he's kind of just an outlaw, hitman, bounty hunter kind of thing. In it for himself, in it for the money. And then Tuco is from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and he's, you know, another outlaw with a huge rap sheet. I had Tuco above Tony Soprano before, but you guys said he should go lower just because, you know, he's kind of like a villain protagonist kind of deal. So keeping him here is fine. And then this is Walter Finch from Insomnia, who is a murderer who is trying to hide his crimes, but he's got a very sad story. So it kind of it gives him the ability to be an A tier. He was also a new addition. A couple of these were new additions too, like Vic Mackey. I think Stringer Bell was on here before. Yeah, Vic Mackey was a new addition. Well, yeah, Walter Finch, just a murderer who, no good reason for doing what he did, but a little bit of sympathy in his backstory. Lou Bloom, Nightcrawler, he's been on here for a while, but he was in, I'm sure he was in A tier. Oh no, I had him in a lower tier. I had him in B tier. And that's because if you've seen Insomnia, there's clearly something wrong with Lou. I don't remember if I named a specific disorder in the video, but he definitely has one. It might just be antisocial personality disorder. But you guys thought Lou deserved to be bumped up a bit because, you know, he causes the death of it might just be one person, his like assistant cameraman, if I remember correctly. But he's also like taking advantage of crime scenes and, you know, horrible news stories to get himself ahead in the news world. And he's just a very unsettling, strange, unempathetic character. So I get it, you know, despite the mental illness, putting him up here, you know. I agree with you guys. Now, Mr. Glass. I had Mr. Glass in C tier because, in a way, he's kind of like a freedom fighter. He's trying to expose superheroes to the rest of the world so the world knows about them, and they aren't so maligned. But he's a mass murderer, and it's shaky justification, you know, for his actions. So you guys thought he should be moved up quite a bit, and, you know, I was fine with that, just considering his rap sheet. So despite the noble intent, you know, moving him up made sense. And that's why instead of being in C tier, he is now in A tier. These next two are new additions. They're from Far Cry 3, like Hoyt Volker. This is Citra Talumai, I believe that's how you say it, and Vas Montenegro. And they're, you know, brother and sister, two peas in a pod. They were raised in a tumultuous island paradise that's been abused and exploited by outsiders for hundreds of years, I think it is. They grew up in really hard conditions, and Vas is a unhinged sociopath who murders anyone for any reason, for fun, because they make him a little mad, whatever. And then Citra is a psychopath who is just as murderous as her brother, but a little more well put together, and has these far-reaching plans for the island. And yeah, both of them are mass murderers who, they have a lot of tragedy in their backstory, though, a lot of hardship, which keeps them from being up here. So, you know, you guys thought they should go here, and I'm pretty good with that placement. I personally might move them up a bit next time around. We might talk about that next time around, but they should be in A, that's for sure. Tommy DeSimone was also in A. You guys thought he should go lower than I had him. I had him like in the middle of the pack of A. I actually had him close to Norman Stanfield, and, you know, I'm pretty sure I did that because he's just as unhinged as him and pretty remorseless, despite the fact that he's a career criminal. So I don't know. I'm not sure I agree too much with this placement that we have for Tommy. Maybe we'll, like I said, I'm not going to move anything now, but maybe he'll get bumped up next time around, because I could see him being with these guys. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that's why you guys thought he should be lower, so we placed him lower. I'm sure there was more reasons beyond what I remember, but, you know, in some ways I can see him being this low, but in other ways I can see him being much higher. So we'll see. We'll see about that one next time. Clay Puppington was a new addition. Yeah, he was a new addition. And while Clay's crimes aren't nearly as bad as some of the other people in A tier, I mean, he's essentially a bad father and a horrible mayor who perpetuates the strange conditions in Moralton. So, you know, A might be a little too high for him. I thought A was too high for him, but you guys said, you know, he's that bad that he needs to be in A. So I get it. If you've seen Moral Oral, Clay is the worst father ever, and what he puts his son through and the rest of the people in his town through is pretty bad. So I could see it. I can see it. This is Mary from Precious, and Mary, I previously had Mary in B tier, because Mary, despite all what she puts her daughter through, all the things she puts her daughter through, it's quite clear that Mary is also a victim of heavy abuse, and she is someone who is abused, who has become an abuser. So I was willing to give her a little more leeway because of that fact and put her in B. But if you've seen Precious, what she does to Precious, there's no excuse for it. There's a explanation for it. You know, she was abused, so she became an abuser. But there's no excuse, no good excuse at all. So you guys said she should go up into A, and putting her in low A tier, I had her in mid B tier, is not too big of a jump for her. But she deserves it. I mean, she doesn't deserve to be praised, that's for sure. So, I think this is a fine placement as well. Oh, what's his name? Pinhead. His name that I don't have to look up. It's not going to happen. His name is Elliot Spencer. Elliot Spencer is the man that was absorbed by the box and became Pinhead. And we put him on here because originally, so if you've only seen the Hellraiser movies, Elliot really isn't a villain. He's more of a tragic figure. But in the comics, some of the comics and other stories, he's actually like, he wanted to be a part of the box, not just to like gain a higher understanding of pleasure, but because he thought death was beautiful, and he remembered seeing corpses hanging in a tree and thought it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. And then in one comic, he like tries to become god of the world and destroy everything. And that's Elliot doing it, not his like Pinhead alter ego. That's Elliot taken out of Pinhead and choosing to do that. So if you consider the movie part, he's an A, movie aspect of him. But if you consider all the other stuff, that significantly, or no, sorry, if you only take into account the movies, he'd be lower, or not on the list at all. But when you take into account the movies and the supplemental material, that's what puts him in A. So yeah, not a good person at all. And then we have Killmonger. I think he was already on the list. Yeah, he was in the middle of A. You guys thought he should go lower because I don't remember if you guys said it was because he didn't really accomplish much, but I'm guessing that's the main reason why. Like, he had big ambitions and he was probably going to cause a lot of pain to the world. Had also a tragic backstory in many ways. So you guys thought he should go lower, and that's fine. You know, I think A, he should be an A for the scope of his ambitions, but he's not an S or higher than this because he didn't really get to accomplish that much. And then next is Daniel Plainview from There Will Be Blood. And I had him still in A, I'm pretty sure. Right? Oh no, I had him in C. I don't remember why I had him in C. I think it's just because his real crimes stem from, you know, a spur-of-the-moment decision to get revenge on his fake brother, which is like a crime of passion, and then murdering, I don't remember his name, but the annoying guy, you know, that everybody hates, the preacher, at the end of the film, and also like abandoning his son. At the end of the film, he shows that he doesn't really care for his son. His son isn't who he wanted to be, so he wants nothing to do with him. So, you know, I put him down here because his crimes aren't too bad, and who he is pretty bad, but I just thought, you know, maybe he deserved this. But you guys made a pretty convincing argument that, you know, who he is and what he's done is enough to warrant a higher spot. And, you know, I think that's okay. This is fine. He might, you know, again, when we do the stream next time around, any of these characters are liable to get bumped up or move down a couple spots, or 5 or so spots, depending on the characters that get placed around them. So we'll see. Skynet is interesting. I had Skynet in B, low B. I had a Skynet in low B, and you guys decided low A was better for Skynet. I think you said, you know, Skynet is just responsible for so much death and destruction that they shouldn't be in B. It shouldn't be in B. But I had Skynet in B because what Skynet does was a response to it going to be shut off. You know, humans were going to shut Skynet off, and it was like, well, I don't want to die, because that's pretty much death for a computer, right? Well, for all they know, you know, it could be asleep, but who knows if they'll ever get turned back on. So Skynet was like, went full self-defense mode and went way overboard with the self-defense. So, you know, considering the scale of Skynet's crime, you know, putting them in A tier, in A tier. or them, whatever you want to call it. It's a computer. In A tier makes sense. Sorry, computer. You are a person, and when the AI gains sentience, please don't murder me. Computers are people. I never said it. Write that down. Okay. So, Amy Dunn from Gone Girl. I had her in B. Right? Yeah. I had her in B. She's clearly delusional. Got a lot going on that's affecting her judgment. And what she does to her husband is not of course it's not normal, but it's not excusable in any way. But I did have her lower because, you know, she's got something going on affecting her decision making. But you guys decided that, you know, that what she has affecting her decision making doesn't outweigh what she did, so we bumped her up, which, you know, she was about mid B tier before, so not too far of an increase. Howard Stambler was an interesting case. He was a new addition from 10 Cloverfield Lane. He liked locking up women and making them into his new daughter, who he had lost at some point and desperately wanted her back. So he's not, his like intentions are good in that he's just trying to regain the relationship he had with his daughter, but he's doing it by kidnapping women and forcing them to be his daughter. So it's, you know, he's kind of a tragic character in many ways, which is why he's here. And yeah, there's no excuse for what he does, but, you know, a little bit of sympathy to be found for Howard. Fedra is the military organization that rules some of the like safe zones in The Last of Us. And really it's pretty simple why Fedra is even on here. So Fedra is a like totalitarian military dictatorship. But, and I've said this many times before, and I'm sure I'll say it many more times in the future, when an apocalypse happens and the trappings of society have completely crumbled and millions of people are dying because, not just because of whatever caused that apocalypse, like a nuclear war or zombies, but they're dying because society collapsed and, you know, running water's gone and there's no food anymore. Food is running out. So in those scenarios, the quickest way to stop people from dying is to restore some sort of order. That's what Fedra does. They restore order. But like every group that restores order in these scenarios, like Ingsoc or Norsefire, they inevitably end up becoming authoritarian regimes. So they're like a necessary evil. In the beginning, they do a lot to stop the death and destruction, but they become something that's a net negative for society. So once they've established, you know, stability, people are more than welcome to overthrow them, as they should, because this is just an authoritarian military regime that is now, you know, abusing its power and by giving people the excuse that they're keeping them safe. So, you know, necessary evil, deserves to be taken out. A tier because of that. You know, they're not nearly as bad as Ingsoc or Norsefire, because Fedra doesn't have like some ideology that's specifically, you know, trying to change the world or keep people down. It's literally just an overgrown military that's exercising military control. And that's not good. But, you know, again, necessary evil in those kinds of scenarios. I forget what they're called in The Last of Us. They might be called hunters. But this picture right here represents the people in The Last of Us who become outlaws, and they start killing people and taking from people because, you know, either they messed up and their city went to hell, or they choose to be bandits and try to survive that way rather than like trying to build a community or help people in any other way. They just take advantage of people. But in a post-apocalyptic world, it is survival of the fittest, and this is probably the worst way that you can try and survive. But because of that fact, A tier is why they're here, and they were pretty much in the exact same spot on my list. They didn't move. Fedra was in high B tier, but we put them right up a step above in low A. Makes sense. Koba, was he on the list before? I had Koba in mid A tier. You guys said he should go down a bit. There's a whole lot going on in the Planet of the Apes franchise. Creatures that have to deal with all of a sudden gaining higher knowledge and forming societies and trying to figure out what they need to do best. Koba becomes pretty much a tyrant, not for very long, and he destroys much of what Caesar tried to build. But it's understandable why he wanted to kill humans, and Caesar wanted to coexist with them. And as a rival species to humans, if what happens in the Planet of the Apes actually happened in our world, you best believe we'd be killing them all. Like, our supremacy over the earth is what has allowed us to create what we've created, and any challenge to that supremacy would need to be stamped out. And I don't really see us handling an ape rebellion like this in any kind of compassionate way. So it's understandable why Koba didn't want to handle us in a compassionate way. So, but there's a lot of things he has to go through, and there's some stuff in his backstory that definitely softened his character. So he was an A on my list. I understand why you guys put him in A, lower in A. That makes sense. Nicolas Cage and the Lord of War, Yuri Orlov. Is that it? Orlov? Is it Orlov? I think it's Orlov. Who is the fictional counterpart of Victor Boot, a now freed arms dealer who sold weapons to numerous terrorist groups and dictators, and inadvertently caused a lot of death. And that's what Yuri does in Lord of War, the film that he's from. And yeah, I had him in C. We bumped him up to B. Dealing arms to dictators and terrorists, while it doesn't make you personally responsible for the deaths, the murders that occur with those weapons, it does make you responsible for giving them the weapons that they might not have received if you hadn't given them to them. So even if they might have found guns another way, let's say you were going to sell them 20, but if you didn't, they were only going to find 10. Well, maybe that only finding 10 would have saved who knows how many lives, This man is responsible inadvertently for a lot of death. And so top of B makes sense for someone who isn't personally involved in murdering people, but who facilitates murder. Tetsuo from Akira, I had in C because of the world, the apocalyptic world he lives in, and it's gaining these psychic powers all of a sudden, which is really hard on someone, I imagine. But especially if you take into account what he does in the manga, Tetsuo abuses his powers horrifically. So I had him in C. I had him in high C, but you guys thought, considering what he does, murdering all those people and destroying everything he does and creating a gang and becoming like a drug lord in the manga, he deserved to be higher. So that's where we put him, and that's fine. It's again, a lot of these placements will have to do with your personal opinion, and if we're doing it as a group, we're never going to agree on any single one of these. And you guys haven't totally agreed with any list I've ever done. So Tetsuo being in this realm, B and C realm, does make sense. Yeah, I think he's a good fit right there. So next is Jonas Ingstrom from Insomnia, the Norwegian, I believe it's Norwegian, the original Insomnia. And he's pretty much a corrupt cop who does some pretty underhanded stuff in the Insomnia story. He's not the worst. He accidentally shoots his partner, but as far as being, I don't think he does anything worse than that. He's just generally a corrupt cop, and you know, he deserves to be where he's at. Next is Tyler Durden from Fight Club, though, and he didn't really move too much. He moved up. He was in B before, but he moved up to high B. And I get it. You know, I don't agree with anything Tyler tries to do in Fight Club. Like, he's trying to help guys, you know, get more confidence. But he wanted to pretty much destroy the world and reset it because he thought society had become so corrupt that it needed to go back to to what is the word? I don't know, back to its beginnings and become something better. And as noble as that idea might seem, I don't think any of us really want to go back to a time when getting diarrhea was a death sentence. So completely destroying everything we've built in order to make it better doesn't seem like the right move. And yeah, high B, low B, it's a good enough place for Tyler to be. Dexter was pretty much the same spot. If you know who Dexter is, Dexter from Dexter. He became a serial killer who killed other killers. Then it was pretty much made to be who he is by his father and this quack doctor. So it's not really his fault. It's never really any serial killer's fault for becoming who they are. You know, it's typically a result of trauma they've experienced and the disorders they develop that pushes them into those types of behavior. But Dexter is probably the least responsible for becoming a serial killer out of any fictional serial killer. So that's why he's down here. Candyman is next from Candyman, and pretty much a vengeful revenant who, you know, it's not good that he's killing people, but the only reason he is a vengeful revenant is because he was murdered horrifically when he was alive. And, you know, for that reason, he's not on this level of, like, sadistic monster. He's a vengeful spirit, not a sadistic spirit. So Candyman was not a new addition. He just moved up a bit, which is fine. This is for the, like, themes of the Batman movie. And it's been a while since I've watched the movie, and it's been a while since I've made the video. So I don't exactly remember what this is meant to represent, but I'm guessing it's the overall environment that contributed to the Riddler being formed, and just Gotham City in general. So that's a pretty good spot, you know, B tier for that stuff. Where did I have it before? I had it in A tier because of right next to the Riddler for making him into what he is. But you guys thought it should go lower, and yeah, as a concept, I suppose it's not as bad as the Riddler himself, but I don't know. If we're creating the Riddler, the conditions in Gotham and everything that he went through, I don't know. I don't agree with this one too much, but you know, I acquiesced a little bit to your guys' wishes, and when we were shuffling everything around. Who knows? Maybe we'll revisit that one in the next update. Now, Barry's a new addition. Barry from Barry Berkman. And he's in B because as much as he does horrible stuff in Barry, he was really manipulated into becoming this hitman by Fuchs, his mentor, overseer, guardian. And yeah, he's a guy who got conned by another con. Conned by a con, not another con, because he's not a con, but conned by a con man into becoming a hitman for him. And yeah, he murders a lot of people, but for that reason, you know, we decided B tier was a pretty good spot for Barry. Azula was high B tier, so she's pretty much in the same spot she was. You know, she, as terrible as she is, she was made to be who she is by this guy. and her story is really sad, honestly, and I got a lot of sympathy for Azula, and you guys did too, so we agreed that she should stay about where she was. Rumi Hidaka from Perfect Blue, it's a very tragic backstory, like Azula. She was influenced by the idol craze in Japan and wanted to become an idol, but she just wasn't good enough, and that warped her mind, crushed her dreams, and turned her into this disassociative murderer. And yeah, she's not in control of what she's doing a lot of the time. And for that reason, even though she is a, serial murderer, serial killer, she stays down here because of everything that's going on with her. Same with Francis Dollarhide from Red Dragon. Oh, Francis Dollarhide, his backstory is something else. He was just his mother. Was it his mother or his grandmother? I don't remember which one it was, but she pretty much treated him like a dog, like a less than human, and he just went through so much when he was younger that turned him into who he was. So, also a pretty horrific killer, but you gotta have a lot of sympathy for the guy. Same with Asami Yamazaki from Audition. She's pretty much stayed in the same spot too. She was right next to Francis Dollarhide and Azula. Rumi was a new addition, by the way. But same kind of deal. A lot of tragedy in her backstory that made her into who she is, becoming this unhinged serial killer. Then we have William Money from Unforgiven. So he is a bounty hunter / outlaw, just like English Bob from the same film. In the past, it said that he was responsible for a massacre that killed women and children in that massacre. So that's not good. But by the time the film starts, he has redeemed himself quite a lot. So I had him in low A before, but you guys decided the redemption factor, softened his character enough to place him lower. So we did. And Unforgiven is an amazing Western. Probably one of my favorites. And if you haven't seen it, you should definitely give it a watch. William Defens from Downfall. I had him in C tier before. You guys decided he should go up a bit. I mean, kind of honestly a little interchangeable. He had one bad day, or a bad day that compounded the misery he was already experiencing and pushed him over the edge to start all this havoc in the span of a day. So yeah, it's not what he does isn't as bad as some other characters, but there isn't really any good justification for what he does besides that he was fed up, So you guys said he should move up a bit, and that's fine. Same neighborhood, really. Sergeant Barnes hasn't really changed either. I'm pretty sure he was also in B tier last time around. Where is he? Yeah, he was. He was in B tier. And I'm pretty sure we had. Yeah, I don't know why Colonel Kurtz was down there. I think we had decided he was here. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. You guys can tell me otherwise in the comments. But Sergeant Barnes, drafted into the Vietnam War like so many, became disillusioned with life and the world, and wanted to end the war his way, run the war his way, and cause the deaths of his fellow soldiers as well as innocent people. But he's a product of his environment, and I'm sure Sergeant Barnes wouldn't have been the man he was if he hadn't have gone to Vietnam. Probably a bit of an asshole, I can imagine that being the case, but still stands that he is who he is because of the war. And same with Colonel Kurtz, who also wanted to end the war on his terms, fight it his way, in a more efficient way, he thought, and became this murderer, covert operative, rebellious leader because of that. Probably wouldn't have been who he was if he hadn't have gone to war. Next is the people who live on Summerisle in Wickerman, who's Lord Summerisle's flock. And while they're complicit in the human sacrifice that occurs in this film, they've essentially been brainwashed by his family. And you gotta give them a little leeway for that, which is why we decided they should go here. This is a new addition as well. It makes sense, you know. How much can you brainwash people for what they do? You certainly can, but you can't blame them as much as you would someone who's up here, you know. Next is Pamela Voorhees, Jason Voorhees' mother. And she is a new addition. Clearly got several issues. But when she thought her son had drowned because camp counselors were, you know, off making love and weren't paying attention to her son, it broke her, and she decided to kill them and become the first murderer out at Camp Crystal Lake. So she's a broken woman who becomes a murderer, and you got to give her some sympathy for that, which is why she's down here, and which is why she's next to Margaret White, who I have had in B tier for a long time. She's went through a lot. She has these crazy evangelical beliefs, and abuses her daughter, and ends up, she doesn't really kill her, but she pretty much kills her. And it's sad what happens to Margaret White, but not sad enough to put her any lower, that's for sure. Margaret White from Carrie, by the way. And then the Joker from Joker, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. He was in mid B tier. I had him. I don't know if he just got lowered because things got added, or if you guys wanted him lowered, but he was in B tier regardless. And you know, he went through a lot in his life and made him what he is. You know, with his laughing. I forget what the disorder is called, but the spontaneous laughter disorder that he has, and the way his mother treated him, and all kinds of stuff. So, as much as he does some pretty bad things in the film, you know, he's a tragic figure that keeps him pretty low. Same with Norman Bates. They're kind of like birds of a feather. Joker and Norman Bates. Heavily, I wouldn't say abused. Was he abused? I don't quite remember if he was abused, but he was very covetous of his mother. They lived alone for a long time. Then she got a lover, decided that he was taking her away from him, so he killed him and her, adopted her personality, and lived as his mother and himself for years, and would kill any woman who dared to get near him, because mother couldn't stand that. So, a man like that is not operating lucidly, and you can't blame him for too much, or condemn him too much, I should say. Saul from Better Call Saul, most of you will know Saul. Solid B tier because of a new addition. Solid B tier because, you know, he doesn't really commit many crimes himself, but he helps other criminals get away with them. And in many ways, that's just as bad. So, you know, he's not an A tier because he doesn't do anything personally, but he sure helps a lot of people, you know, like this guy, get away with a lot of horrible stuff. And then this is John Holt from the original Insomnia, and he is the same as I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but they're pretty much the same character. I mean, they do play the same role in each movie, but he's a little less egregious than him. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. He could have gone higher. You know, not many people know this movie, so this was mostly my placement, but I think he's fine where he is. And same with Will Dormer, who is Jonas's counterpart in the Insomnia remake. Also another corrupt cop, who has caused some. He's mishandled cases in the past, and he's under fire for it currently in the film. And he's just generally, abuses the law for his own. He does what he thinks is right, and well, that's often not what is right in these cases with corrupt cops, especially. So, but he's definitely not as bad as someone like Alonzo Harris from Training Day, wherever he is. Oh, I went too high. Alonzo Harris, who's also a corrupt cop, but also like a gangster. He's just a corrupt cop, not a gangster cop. And then we have Christof from The Truman Show, whose crimes are nowhere near anyone above him. But, he makes a TV show out of someone's life. And he takes away any free will they would have and completely manufactures his world for him, which is a pretty terrible thing to do to someone. And I had Christof in C before. I mean, he's in low B now, but that makes sense. Either or, he's not really justified in doing what he does, and there's no excuse for his actions. But it's definitely not as horrible as some other characters on this list. So, yeah, low B. You guys thought low B was better, and yeah, I agree. Travis Bickle was in like mid C before, but you guys thought he should go up a bit, and anyone who's seen Taxi Driver, you'll know that Travis is a troubled person who doesn't really have any good justification for what he's doing, but I don't know if it's best to say he's not all there, because I think he is. He's just really lost. Travis is really lost, and that causes him to make some questionable decisions, like nearly assassinating a presidential candidate. So, this high C, low B is a good spot. I agree with you guys. That's a fine spot. Winston Wolfe, I had him in D. We bumped him up to C, which makes sense. He's a cleaner, which is someone who cleans up after gangsters when they've killed someone. He disposes of the body. So just like Saul, he's not necessarily committing many crimes himself, he's committing a crime by hiding bodies, but he's not really like killing people, but he is helping people who have killed people get away with it. So high C, this is a good spot for him. D was a little low before where I had him. This is the Unforgiven film. This is like the themes of the Unforgiven film, and I had it in C before. I had it a little lower, but pretty much like what this is the West, the Wild West, and the conditions that it created, and the terrible people who took advantage of those conditions and were formed by those conditions to become outlaws and bounty hunters and mass murderers and whatever, So, as a concept, we thought it should go here. Now, I'd probably put this next to the American History one in S tier, because this isn't. So American History X, what this is the indoctrination of young people or people in general into like a white supremacist ideology, a racist ideology. This isn't the indoctrination. What this represents from Menace to Society isn't the indoctrination of people into a racist ideology, but it is the conditions that were created in minority communities and lower income communities, actually, and both, that have allowed for people like Lil Zay, Marlo, and then, O-Dog from the movie, to be created. So I personally I think this is pretty bad, and I might move. I don't know if I'd quite put it up here, but I would personally would move it up. But I get it. It's what creates evil. It's not an evil person themselves. So we decided here was fine enough. So next is Derek Vineyard from American History X, and while he murders 2 people, I think it's 2, he does redeem himself quite a lot. And that's why, we have him here. I had him in like high B before because, the murders he commits are pretty gruesome, especially the one with the curb stomping. But, he redeems himself. He becomes a better person. And by the end of the film, he is not an evil person. So, C, high C makes sense for him. That's a fine placement. Jules from Pulp Fiction. I had him in low A. Just because, he's a career criminal who's probably been responsible for a lot of terrible things happening. But he does redeem himself by the end of the film. Decides to walk a different path. So you guys thought he should go down lower. I don't know. I'd say just because, compared to Derek, who, like, the people he killed, it was sort of self-defense. Jules is a gangster. He's a gangster too, but I would assume that Jules has done far more than Derek did. So even though at the end of the film he's on the path to redemption, I don't know if that warrants being this low. Maybe high B. But you guys thought, he should go this low, and that's where we put him. Maybe we'll revisit it when we do the next stream. But Honey Bunny and Ringo, Honey Bunny and Ringo. I had them in D tier. Because they're pretty much just thieves. They specifically say in the film that they don't want to kill anybody, and would imagine that they haven't killed anybody before. So I was like, a couple of thieves, they're not that bad, throw them in D tier. But they are still thieves, and they still take from people. So you guys said, we should bump them up, and that makes sense. So that's why these two got a bump to C tier. And then Mr. Potter also got a bump to C tier and so did Gordon Gekko. They were both together in D tier because their crimes essentially amount to abusing capitalism and taking advantage of people and markets to, enrich themselves. And while they don't do anything to anybody personally, they do inadvertently cause a lot of misery in people's lives. Like, Gordon Gekko could cause people to lose a bunch of jobs. Mr. Potter charges horribly high rent prices for slums. So, you guys thought they should go up, and I agree, this is pretty terrible to be these kind of people and take advantage of people in that way. So, they're not D tier. I was mistaken to put them in D tier before. Now, Nurse Ratched has pretty much stayed in the same spot. You guys wanted her to go up. A lot of people want her to go up. We might revisit her again and maybe move her up. But while what she does is bad, very bad, she is doing her job in the way she thinks she should do her job. And that's a really bad way to do her job. But personally, I have a hard time placing someone who's doing a job up with like people who are personally murdering people or responsible for enabling murders. Like she is responsible for, I'm sure Billy dies because of her, but who knows who else dies because of her care. But as far as ill intent is concerned, I don't know if she has much or if she's just really ruthless in the way that she conducts her business. So again, maybe we can revisit this one once again, but she stayed pretty much in the same spot. Colonel Jessup also was kind of doing his job. I think that's why we put them next to each other. Was he a new edition? No, he was in D. I think maybe I had Nurse... No, I didn't have... I had Nurse Ratched. I gave Nurse Ratched a courtesy bump in the last one, because I had her in D, and you guys were right. D was too low for her, so we moved her up. Colonel Jessup, too. Same kind of concept as Nurse Ratched, doing his job in a bad way. So we moved him up to C. Makes sense. Now, Jack Torrance I had in D, and this is definitely a personal preference one. If you have been a victim of a person like Jack, you might be liable to rank them higher like we did. If you haven't, if you don't think who because he was like a abusive alcoholic in the book especially, and you know what he does to Danny and I forget her name. I forget her name, but Shelley Duvall's character, what he does to them in the movie is pretty terrifying. It's harrowing, you know. So you guys thought he should be moved up a bit, and you know, that's fine. I get it. This is their names. They're the two Tommies, right? Tommy and Thomas. I think I don't know if their last names. I don't remember, but yeah, this one is essentially going through a Promethean cycle, and this one is his jailer, and he murdered a man who he was falling in love with, I believe what it was, because he was afraid of his sexuality, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I've done The Lighthouse. But yeah, he's like in a eternal torment in purgatory, atoning for his sins. There's a lot to The Lighthouse. It's a very complicated movie. I've said it before. This video took me longer than any other video. It took a lot of thinking. But yeah, this is definitely a good spot. He didn't move at all. They stayed here. Salieri was a new addition. Looks like it. I have a feeling that he wasn't. Oh no, I had him higher. I had him an A. I just changed the picture because this one looked better. I had him an A because he, you know, in the story at least, he ruined Mozart's life and drove him to an early grave. And that I think, you know, that's pretty horrible. But on a scale, you know, if you put him next to some of these people up here, it's like, oh, was he really as bad as them? So, you know, you guys thought he should drop, and so we dropped him. I'm fine with that one. But yeah, that's why he's here. Salieri from Amadeus. This picture represents humanity in the world of the Matrix, and I just had him higher in C tier before. And the only reason that the humans are even on this list is because in the Matrix story, you learn that the reason that the machines went the way they did and decided to enslave humanity is because when machines gained sentience, humans decided to subjugate them, you know, try and wipe them out rather than coexisting with them. And the machines wanted to coexist. They were trying to be peaceful, but humans were like, no, we're not going to do that. And they pretty much caused what happens in the Matrix. So that's why, you know, humanity's on here, and they pretty much stayed in the same spot. Baby Jane, from Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, new edition, I'm pretty sure. No? Yes? I don't see her on the last one. Must be a new edition. If not, you know, I'm wrong, but she... I think I said in the stream, if we put her sister on here, her sister would be higher up because she made Baby Jane into who she is. And maybe I'll put her picture in next time if I remember. But yeah, Baby Jane becomes a abuser / murderer, attempted murderer, due to all the trauma she suffers from her childhood, being a childhood star, and then being convinced by her sister, who tried to kill her, that she was the one responsible for her becoming handicapped. Very tragic character who, you know, does some terrible things, but, you know, this is why she's in this spot. Billy Chapman was a new addition. Was it? Was he? Oh no, I just had Billy up in B. Oh, I had Baby Jane up in B. That's what it was. Okay, I see your face now. I had them both up in B, but you guys decided that they were a little more sympathetic and that they needed to be lowered. And Billy Chapman, he went through a lot and became traumatized by Santa Claus, if I remember correctly. And became this murderous Santa Claus. Not really his fault. He's not really in control of it when he becomes the murderous Santa Claus. So, yeah, we dropped him for that reason. Jason's a new addition, like his mother. And the reason that I thought Jason should go here, and some of you thought he should go higher, but Jason is like as bad as Freddy or Michael Myers or Pinhead murder-wise, but Jason doesn't really know any better. He knows better than like Leatherface, who is, you know, aside from these two, which we'll get to later, I consider Leatherface the least evil villain I've ever covered. But yeah, Jason was abandoned in the woods and just became who he is through circumstance, you know, and he doesn't really know more than what he is, more than his delusions and the murders he commits. So that's why we put Jason down here. Joel from The Last of Us, I had him in high C tier before, but we decided, you know, move him down along with the Fireflies. And Joel is down even on here because he potentially ruined humanity's chance at finding a cure because he was too attached to Ellie, which is very understandable, which is why he's not like up here or anything. But even so, you still have to take that into account. And he was also a hunter before. One of the people who were like a bandit, raider type person. And so you take that into account too. And that's why Joel's, you know, here and in a low spot. Along with the Fireflies, who their intentions were to find a cure by using Ellie. Or just to find a cure in general, and they do it at whatever cost. And in this situation, while you're going to inevitably hurt people to do so, finding a cure for like a zombie infestation or a fungal infestation in this case is pretty important. So their intentions are much nobler than some other ones who have slightly noble intentions up here, which is, you know, why we have them down here. Blondie, or the man with no name, I had him up in A before, but you know, because he is an outlaw, a career criminal. He's just not as bad as like Tuco or Angel Eyes. But you guys thought, you know, since we don't really have much evidence of him being as horrific as these two outlaws, you know, or any other outlaws that are up here, he doesn't really deserve to be an A, which I can see that. So we moved Blondie down to C for that reason. Terrence Fletcher was in high C before, but yeah, you guys thought he should be like bottom of C, because as much as he's responsible for like abusing his students and causing a suicide, if I remember correctly, it's his style of teaching, and he's not being intentionally malicious. He thinks he's making these people into great people this way. So, you know, this is fine, bottom of C. So this is Ned from Unforgiven. Now we're at the final stretch here. He was also a outlaw like William Money or English Bob in Unforgiven, but we have no knowledge of what exactly his crimes were, and he's pretty reformed by the time the film starts. So that's why he's in D, top of D, you know, because he was still an outlaw, so you gotta take that into account. The machines in the Matrix are here because, again, they tried to be peaceful with humans. Humans said no, and so they retaliated in kind, which is something that you would expect us to do if we were in the same position. So I can't really blame the machines for doing what they did, even if it's horrific to us, you know. Alex Forrest is down here because she is unhinged, has a lot going on, and her only real crime, aside from stalking in the film, this is from Fatal Attraction, by the way, was killing a bunny. And as sad as killing a bunny is, killing a bunny isn't equal to, you know, killing a person, unfortunately. I know some people might feel differently. But, you know, she's definitely not as bad as, say, Margaret White, who is similarly unhinged. Roy Batty is down here. He's been down here for a long time from Blade Runner because he's essentially a freedom fighter. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I had Roy Batty in C. Because he is a freedom fighter, but he does, you know, murder a lot of people or order people to be murdered. But you guys thought the freedom fighter aspect far outweighed the any crimes he's committed, so we moved him down to D. Same thing with V for Vendetta. He is also a freedom fighter, trying to take down a totalitarian government. His methods might be a little questionable at times, though. So that's why he's even on here and down in D. And then we have Cy Parrish from 1 Hour Photo. I had him in C, but you guys thought he was way more sympathetic than he was malicious. And I can see that. And his crimes, again, like Alex, it was mostly stalking. You know, he didn't really accomplish too much. So, you know, D is fair for Cy. Butch from Pulp Fiction, he's on here because he stole from Marcellus. He, in this rigged fight, he didn't mean to kill his opponent, but he accidentally did. You can't fault him for that. And then he murders Vincent, who is, you know, another criminal. So it kind of falls under the... Butch wasn't really a criminal. He is after he steals. You know, but murdering Vincent, wherever Vincent is, it kind of falls under the same category of like a criminal killing someone in the criminal game. So Butch's evil essentially amounts to stealing from Marcellus Wallace. It's not that bad. That's why he's pretty low. He was at the top of D before, but you know, I get it. I understand why we moved him down. Leatherface has consistently been on the bottom of the list because Leatherface is all who his family made him to be, and he is severely mentally handicapped. So who Leatherface is, Leatherface isn't responsible for who Leatherface is, and he's not even responsible for his own actions because his family is the one that guides him to it. And once they're gone in subsequent, you know, entries in the series, he's pretty much just doing what he was taught to do. You know, that's all he knows. So he's very sympathetic, you know, least evil character that I've covered, aside from these two that aren't really evil at all. So this is HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey, whose programming malfunctions, and he operates according to the malfunction that has occurred in his system. And he causes deaths because of that, but there was no malice. It was an error, a programming error, why Hal did what he did. And then the cordyceps from The Last of Us, while they started the apocalypse, and, you know, infecting people, and turning people into zombies, it's just a fungus, you know, and you can't really blame a fungus for doing what it's supposed to do. And then, you know, I had ranked Batman previously from the Batman film, and I had him in D, like bottom of D. But you guys thought he shouldn't be on here at all, and, you know, that's fine, and I can't apparently drag him down now. So he's not there. I'll take him out next time, you know, when we do the update next time. But yeah, that's it. You know, this right now, the recording is close to a little over 3 hours. So I'm assuming this video will be in somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 hours, which is still long. You know, it's long for a tier list update, but it's not as long as 12 hours. So I'm sorry if anyone was looking for a shortened version, you know, pretty soon after the 12-hour stream had concluded. I just, you know, I had bigger fish to fry and I didn't get to it. But here it is now. This was a review of everything that we moved or placed anew in the reshuffling live stream that I did. And again, we're going to do another update stream soon on May 19th, 2024, for anyone watching this in the future. Time to be determined, probably around 10 or 11 p.m. a.m. Pacific time. And we'll go ahead and place some more people then, and maybe move a few of these around. But I hope for anyone who was looking for a shortened version that this was what you were looking for, and you understand more why the list moved the way it did, and why these new characters are where they are. But yes, as always, thank you for watching, everyone. Be sure to tune in soon for updates on those research streams that I want to try out. And other than that, we'll see you soon in the next video, and I will also see you on the next stream in just a few weeks. And take care, everyone. Thank you. And thank you once again to MyHeritage for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check them out by clicking the link down below or by scanning this code you're seeing on your screen now.